Good morning, friends, and welcome to today's second episode on some spiritual reflections for faithful Christian living. We'll begin with a moment of prayer. Let's tune into God. Dear God, bless me today. Bless my family. Bless my neighbors and colleagues. Bless my city and country. Bless the whole world. Keep me from harm and evil. Keep me from sickness and injustice. Give me peace today, I pray. Give me strength today. God, fill me with your love. God, fill me with your joy. Give me wisdom in all I do. Give me influence in all I do. Give me success in my works. Help me love others today. Help me bless others today. Help me bless also my enemies. May war cease in the world. May your justice prevail. May dictators fall from power. Give food to the hungry. Give parents to the orphans. Show your presence to widows. Heal broken and sick people. Help me be a miracle to this world today. I believe you heard me. Thank you, O God. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, the world without end. Amen. My dear friends, yesterday we began with episode 1, and the theme for yesterday was God our foundation. And we said that we wanted to learn the art of contextualizing our lives. And we saw various contexts within which situations take meaning for us. When we looked at the life of Jesus, if we look at the context of his execution and death, there was, of course, religious controversy, there was political scheming, the Pharisees, the chief priests, the Jews who were against him, roping in the Romans to carry out this execution. So there was a lot of social scenario, social contexting taking place. And if we look at the life and the death of Jesus, merely in the context of what happened in that social reality at that time, then we are missing the point. Because there is the ultimate context, the larger context within which all these events unfolded. And that is the context of God's vision, God's plan of salvation. That is the ultimate context that we are saying, the prism through which we should view every event and every moment of our lives. And so the death of Jesus, it took place within the wonderful salvation plan of God, because death was not the end of Christ's story. He rises again. And that makes his death and his suffering even more meaningful. My dear friends, therefore we are saying that we need to make God the context of our lives, and therefore God should be the foundation of our lives. I'd like to quote an example of a friend of mine who shared that he was trying to set up his business. And all of us know that when you are a beginner trying to set up something, it takes a lot of effort. You've got to face a lot of failures, a lot of difficulties that come on the way. And he saw that in his initiative of setting up this business, he was blessed by God. He was seeing doors opening. He was seeing that the plans that he had were unfolding the way he felt that was profitable to him. And it so happened that once he went to a particular school to sell his products, and there were other contenders too, other business people who wanted their products to be accepted by this particular management. And he prayed to God saying, Lord, I hope that, my product will be accepted. And he said that prayer and he went, and at the end of the marketing of his product, he was waiting for the response from that school management. And to his misfortune, if you like to call it, his marketing strategy did not work and his product was not accepted. So, what is he going to do? Is he going to curse God? Lord, I prayed and you did not answer my prayer? In the context of his business deal, in the context of his own profits, perhaps that might have been a failure. It must have been a loss to him that that school did not accept his product. But this man was able to place this entire episode of his life within the context of God. And he shared with me and he said, Father, in my prayer, I realized God is telling me, son, if I only give you all the deals, what will happen to my other children? I need to feed them too. They would go starving. And so therefore I need to balance things out. I need to even things out. You've been blessed. Have faith. I will bless you even more. But this time I need to grant this to someone else who needs it. My dear friends, this is the way in which people are able to cope with failures in their life. And that strength comes when we place ourselves within the divine will of God. And that is the prism through which we need to look at every event of our life. That is basically what we were trying to explain yesterday, that God is the foundation of our lives and that we need to look at life from this context of God's holy and divine will for us. Today, our topic is tuning into God. If we want to make God the context of our lives, we need to tune into Him. And how do we do that? Allow me to share a few steps that will help us to tune into this wonderful person that we are invited to relate to, God. I'd like to acknowledge that most of the anecdotes and stories that I will be using have been taken from a book authored by Father Hedwig Lewis, S.J., God Here and Now. But of course, I will add my own reflections to it, share with you some life experiences, what I've gained from people and also my own, so that it becomes something that is a little original, a little adapted at the same time from various other sources that we read. So how do you tune into God, my dear friends? I think the first thing that we need to do is to make space for God in our lives. We need to make space for God in our lives. What does that mean, making space for God? There's this beautiful poem by Margaret Halaska, and she narrates how there is a kind of a conversation between God and the human person, where God is vying for space in the life of the human person, and the way in which this human person is responding to God who wants to intervene, who wants to break through into our lives. And this is how it goes. The father knocks at my door seeking a home for his son. Okay, so the father is knocking at your door. Think of that. And he's saying, hey, I want you to give space for my son Jesus. And the human person, it could be you, it could be me, what does he or she respond? Rent is cheap, I say. And God says, I don't want to rent. I want to buy. And I say, I'm not sure I want to sell, but you might come in to look around. See, that's the kind of bargaining. I don't want to sell the space of my life. I can give you to on rent. No? And then I'm telling God, okay, come have a look. And then God says, I think I will. And then I begin to think within myself and I say, I might let you have a room or two. And God says, I like it. I'll take the two that you'll give me. You might decide to give me more someday. I can wait, says God. See how patient God is. He doesn't force us into anything, but He allows us to respond. He's looking for our readiness. I like it. And then I respond, I'd like to give you more, but it's a bit difficult. I need some space for me. How difficult it is, my dear friends. When we think of God invading our lives, and when we think of how comfortable we've grown in doing the routine of what we keep doing, whether that is even the wrong things. If God invades our life, we will be challenged to change. We don't know what God is going to make of our life if we allow Him in. And so therefore, we say, I'd like to give you, but it's difficult. I need some space for me. And God says, I know, but I'll wait. I like what I see. Maybe I can let you have another room. I really don't need that much. So you see, slowly, how grace builds on us. When we begin to respond to God, slowly, it's like I'm taking one step towards God, and God in some way is having an influence over me. He opens up my mind. And so therefore I say, maybe I can give you a little more space. Thanks, says God. I'll take it. I like what I see. I'd like to give you the whole house, but I'm not sure. Think on it, says God. I wouldn't put you out. Your house would be mine, and my son would live in it. You'd have more space than you'd ever had before. I don't understand at all. Well, friends, how do you understand? If God is saying He's going to take your entire house and still leave you space, how do you understand it? I know, says God, but I can't tell you about that. You'll have to discover it for yourself. That can only happen if you let Him have the whole house. If you let Jesus have the whole house. A bit risky, I say. Yes, says God, but try me. I'm not sure. I'll let you know. I can wait, says God. I like what I see. My dear friends, it's a beautiful poem, a beautiful reflection that brings before us the kind of bargaining that we do. And so the first thing we need to do in order to tune into God is to make that space for Him. What am I so filled with? That's what we need to ask ourselves. Am I too filled with my own importance? Am I too filled with myself? Am I filled with anger and jealousy and pride and arrogance? If these are the things that are filling me, there will be no space for God. Or if I am so busy right through my day, making business deals, giving the importance for my career to the extent of neglecting everything else, my family, and of course even my relationship with God, that's not making space for God. On a Sunday, for example, if I have a choice between watching my favorite soap opera and maybe going for mass, the prime time of my day, if I'm going to say that I'm going to fulfill my own desires. I want to rest a little more. I want to relax. I had a very, very tiring weekend, a week, and now it's a weekend. I mean, it's rightful that I enjoy my rest. Yes, that's true. But then, what is the importance that you are giving God? Many people, they bargain like this. And so, therefore, this is where you've got to make that choice to give God the importance in your life. That just as a soap opera or my rest may give me that pleasure for that moment that I'm watching it, does a relationship with God, giving God the prime time of my life, give me that kind of satisfaction? It is there that we need to make space for God, my dear friends. So, the first point, to tune into God, make space for Him. A second way of tuning into God is to be able to visualize who God is for you. Do you have a picture of who God is for you? We all need some kind of tangible image to relate to, because we are very experiential people. We are empirical people. And so, therefore, abstractions don't work with all of us. So, therefore, do you have a picture of God? It is said that this little girl, short little girl, she's attending Mass with her parents, and after Mass, there is this huge priest, tall, and he's standing outside greeting all his parishioners. And this little girl comes to him and asks him, "Father, what color are God's eyes?" And the priest, pretending as though he doesn't hear her, he bends down deep as though to touch his toe and says, "Say that again." And she says, "Father, what color are God's eyes?" And without batting an eyelid, the priest tells her, "Blue, just like yours, baby." And this little girl is so happy, her innocence. She runs to her parents and tells them, "God has eyes just like mine, blue." My dear friends, how do you visualize God? Jesus comes across through many, many images. Maybe Jesus the Good Shepherd. That's a beautiful image that we have of Jesus. Or maybe Jesus the miracle worker. Jesus the preacher. Jesus the healer. Jesus the one who goes and interacts and mingles with his people, especially with sinners and outcasts. What is the kind of image you carry of God? Do you see God perhaps as a friend with whom you can relate with? Do you see God as a policeman? Someone who's always looking out to see whether you've done something wrong? That could be an image that people carry about God. And so there we need to ask ourselves, what is the kind of image I have? How do I see God? And when we look at God with something tangible, with some image that we have in mind, we can tune into Him more easily. The Lord is my shepherd. Psalm 23 verse 1. A very consoling psalm. Dig into your own experience, my dear friends. Ask yourselves, how do I visualize God for me? So what are the two things I have said just now about how to tune into God? First, make space for God. Second, visualize what God looks for you. A third image that we can have, or a third way of tuning into God, is to review your spiritual life. That is, to review how God has walked with you in your life. My dear friends, if you look at life from the day you were born, you might not have memories of that particular day, but from the earliest memories you have of your childhood till what you are living today, if you reflect in prayer, in contemplation, in meditation, you will realize that God has His hand. There is the thread of God's love, care, challenges touching you right through your life. Allow me to share a view of my personal testimonies here, my dear friends, of how I see God walking with me. When I was a child, I was pretty sickly. I used to have bouts of bronchitis and I had bouts of ear pain. And I still remember when those ear pains would come, my mom and dad would sit with me through the night. My mom would make that mustard oil a little warm, and then my dad would put it in my ears. I used to get so sick that my brother, he would tell me that in order to escape your examinations, you press some secret button and you fall sick. Schooling, my dear friends, was a real nightmare for me. And so therefore giving exams used to be a big, huge task. I would like cry before my exams. So much so that in 3 consecutive years, I managed to evade the unit tests. The sicknesses came to me. You could say it was a secret button. You could say it was a psychological kind of an illness that came perhaps at that time. So in my 7th standard, I remember I had jaundice. And because of that jaundice, I skipped an entire unit test. In my 8th standard, I fractured my hand, and so I missed a unit test. In my 9th standard, I got chicken pox, and there again I missed my unit test. My dear friends, I used to have these ankle pains, knee pains, as though there's some extra growth of some bone. And deep in my heart, I always had this desire that I want to be a priest. From my earliest memories, I had this desire to be a priest. And so, right from the 7th standard, when I met my vocation promoter, and I told my family that we'll keep in touch, I'm going to Don Bosco's, and knowing that this kind of sickness was there, at the back of my mind, I would wonder whether I would cope. And after my 10th standard exams, I took that step and joyfully left home to the aspirantate in Don Bosco, Lonavala. And believe it, my dear friends, from the moment I landed there, there was not once that I had a bout of bronchitis. My ankle pains, my knee pains simply disappeared. It is there that I saw that God is there. And if I share with you the testimony of my studies, like I told you, schooling was a nightmare. I used to hate studying, so much so that even if I got some kind of low grade, I would be very happy about it. In the 3rd or 4th standard, I remember getting a C grade, and I was running around the colony saying, I got C grade, I got C grade. And of course, it must have been pretty embarrassing for my mom and my dad when my brothers and sisters would all top the class or be at least within the first 3. And I remember I failed for the first time in geography. I was in the 7th standard and I had 16 and a half marks out of 50. And I was wondering how I will face my dad, who was a stickler, a disciplinarian, who would demand the best out of us. And I got so scared that I went and told my teacher, Teacher, please pass me, please pass me. And I didn't even go and tell home that I'd failed in geography. And the teacher looking at me said, Hey, aren't you Sebastian's brother? He gets first rank in class, and how is it that you're failing? Anyway, I'll see what I can do. And so the next day, I was all afraid, hoping the teacher would do something. And the next day, when I went to school, the teacher said, Okay, Isaac, I have made your 16 and a half into 17 and a half. And 17 and a half becomes 18 out of 50, which is a pass mark. And that's how I passed my geography test with grace marks. When I came to the 10th standard, my dear friends, I had to do the prelims. And in that preliminary exam, I failed in Hindi. I got just 32 out of 100. Passing is 35. And I said, now no teacher is going to come to rescue me to give me that many marks to pass. And I went home and I said, this is the story of, I've failed in my prelims in Hindi. I would expected my dad to give me two tight raps, but he just sat there quietly. I think he knew that when someone is broken, we must not break him further. I definitely understood the spirit behind which my dad would demand things from us. I somehow passed my 10th standard exams, and the surprising factor was that maths used to be very, very tough, but in the board exams, I got 119 out of 150 marks in maths. And therefore, I thought, wow, this is a clear sign that I too must take science. Most of my brothers and sisters have taken science. तो हम किसी से कम नहीं. And I took science. And my dear friends, when I went to the aspirant in Lonavala, the first subject that I failed in was maths. And I remember all the girls in my class came around and saying, Isaac, don't cry, study well, and things like that. No, and okay, I was consoled. But the aspirant at Lonavala, it threw open so many avenues of possibilities and platforms for growth in which I was able to grow in the talents that God gave me. Whether it was singing, whether it was music, whether it was theatre, whether it was oratory. And I was so taken up with that spirit of joy in that place that what I detested most, my studies, took the back burner. I didn't concentrate on my studies there, but I focused on all the extracurriculars. And I remember that I was a very, very short boy, and the time came for a dramatics competition. And I wanted to hone my skills of acting, so the teacher said, those of you who'd like to take part in this can give your names. And I innocently went and I gave my name to my teacher. And she looked at my size and said, you look too small. She took my name and said, okay, I'll let you know. Maybe not this time, some other time I'll give you a chance. I said, okay. I went back to class. And 2 days before the play could take place, the teacher called for me and said that the main actor has ditched us. Since you had given your name, we're giving you a chance. Prove yourself. See what you can do in 2 days. My friends, I was quite overwhelmed. And I said, okay, I've got an opportunity here. Let's try the best I can. And I literally prayed to God and I said, Lord, help me to do this acting in the way as naturally as I can. And on that day, my dear friends, when we came onto the stage, after I, for the first time, acted in a school play as such, when the results were declared, the results were Gandhi House, which is my house, first place. And the best actor, Isaac. That was another indication, my dear friends, that God is with me. He wanted to build me up in some way, despite my failures in the academics. So coming back to the academics, like I said, since studies took a back burner, when I was in my 12th standard, I had to learn all these theorems. I had to learn how to do all these max sums, and there was integrations and derivatives. These were completely mind-boggling problems for me. And literally, I hadn't solved one single maths sum in those 2 years. I was relying on the theorems. I said if I learn 10 theorems by heart, at least 5 will come and I might pass. And literally, my dear friends, for my maths exams, maths 1 and maths 2, this is what I did. I said 50-50 marks paper for the 12th standard board exams. In maths 1, I must get 12 out of 50, which is already a failure. And in maths 2, I said I should get 23 out of 50. So you put the two together, 12 plus 23 is 35 out of 100. And that's the way I prepared myself and went for that board exam. After my first maths paper, I remember my brother who was studying in Vadodara College at that time. I told him, John, my next maths paper will decide whether I pass or I fail. I don't know what's going to happen. And my dear friends, I finished the board exams, and we normally join the novitiate on the 24th of May, and the results are declared in June. And so I went to the novitiate, and 1 week before the results were declared, I fell sick. I was totally petrified, so afraid whether I would fail or pass, because if I failed, I would be repatriated, go home, and the dreams of being a priest would all end there. And when the day came for the result, I somehow mustered courage and with another friend of mine walked to the college on the opposite side of the road to check whether my number had appeared on the board. And I'm sitting here in front of you as a priest, my dear friends, so it's obvious that my number did appear there and I had passed. But the beauty is this, my dear friends, that when the principal came to give us the results, and when I checked my results and I looked into maths, I saw there in maths I had 35 star, which means passed with grace marks. My dear friends, if this is not God manifesting His presence in my life, saying that, you are perhaps going away by not concentrating on what you should have concentrated, your studies, etc., whatever it was. Now, it's like I'm going more away from what I would want to achieve, and God is coming there and picking me up and planting me, carrying me along. That's the experience of God's love in my life, my dear friends. There are many more episodes. It's too short to share it in this segment of what I'm trying to share with you. Look into your own lives, my dear friends. If you want to tune into God, you need to see how God is present in your life. No doubt there might be many failures and many setbacks. But if God is the context of your life, you will see His presence even in those failures, even in those setbacks. And definitely, life is not only failures and setbacks. There will also be those moments where He has answered your prayers. He might have demanded a lot of patience from you before He gave you that answer. Or maybe at this point in time, He's still demanding that patience from you so that He knows when is the right time to give you what you're asking for, to give you what you really need, to give you what is best for you. So, my dear friends, three things that I've spoken of so far in order to tune into God. First, make space for God. Second, visualize your God. Third, look into your own experience and gauge how God has been present there. A fourth way of tuning into God is to assess your prayer life, my dear friends. What happens to you when you sit in prayer? Is prayer a boring experience for you? Is prayer something dry, drab? It requires a lot of effort. The moment you sit into prayer, you feel you're feeling sleepy, you feel like yawning, you feel like getting up and occupying your mind with all the other things, doing something. What is the quality of your prayer life? We need to gauge that. It is said that Saint Benedict was once traveling on horseback and he came across a peasant who was trudging along wearily on foot. And Saint Benedict dismounted to exchange pleasantries. And the peasant tells Saint Benedict, "You are very fortunate to have a horse. If I had given my life to prayer, I am sure I would not have to journey on foot." And Saint Benedict is said to reply to him, "Do you think you can manage as a man of prayer?" "Why? Why ask? Isn't it simple?" says this peasant. "So let's strike a bargain." Saint Benedict tells him, "If you are able to complete one Our Father without an interruption, I will give you my horse." "That's an easy bargain," said the astonished peasant. "So here I go." And he immediately stood still, folded his hands, closed his eyes, and began the rendition of the Lord's Prayer. "Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come." He cut it short, raised his eyebrows, and inquired of the saint, "Will you give me the horse with its saddle and bridle too?" Only too late did he realize that he had lost the bet. My dear friends, is prayer something like this for you and me? Are we too distracted? Matthew chapter 15, verse 8. These people, says God, honor me with their words, but their heart is really far away from me. Is that what it is for us, my dear friends? How is your prayer? Are you only giving lip service, saying the prayers by heart? Yesterday we made mention of that, right? Do I understand or do I mean what I say through all the repetitive prayers that we are taught in our faith journey? And so tuning into God requires this fourth element, trying to assess your prayer life and saying, how can I perfect myself in this discipline of prayer? A fifth step to tune into God is to be able to relate your prayer to life. Relate your prayer to life. We must not say that now, I am in a prayerful mood and therefore I am saying my prayers and it has no bearing on my practical living. Here's another poem. I knelt to pray when day was done and prayed, O Lord, bless everyone. I knelt to pray when day was done, lift from each saddened heart the pain and let the sick be well again. And then I woke another day and carelessly went on my way. The whole day long I did not try to wipe a tear from a single eye. I did not try to share the load. I did not even go to see the sick man just next door to me. Yet once again when day was done, I prayed, O Lord, bless everyone. But as I prayed, into my ear there came a voice that whispered clear, pause, hypocrite, before you pray. Whom have you tried to bless today? God's sweetest blessings always go by hands that serve Him here below. And then I hid my face and cried, forgive me, God, for I have lied. Let me but live another day, and I will live the way I pray. My dear friends, let your prayer translate itself into action. And so if we make a conscious effort to allow this to happen, not just mouth our prayers, not just say prayers, but to become a prayerful person. That's the important thing. I become prayerful in my attitudes. I become prayerful in my thoughts. I become prayerful in what I say to people. And because of that, I become prayerful in my actions. And when this is a conscious choice, you can be sure that you are tuning into God. So let's summarize so far the 5 things I've said. First and foremost, make space for God. Second, visualize your God. Third, look at how God has been present in the history of your life. Fourth, assess your prayer life. Fifth, relate your prayer to life. 2 more points I'd like to add, my dear friends, in today's reflection. And the 6th point to tune into God is to cultivate the need for solitude, my dear friends. That is, to take the time out to sit by yourself and pray. It is said that a colleague working in a company of his friend observed this person going into the woods before going home. And he would wonder, why does this man not go straight home but go into the woods? So he decided to follow him and see what he was doing. And that particular day when he saw him, he went after him and he saw that this man went into the woods, he went into a quiet place, he brushed aside some leaves, saw a bench there, and he sat there, bowed his head, joined his hands in prayer. And when he finished his prayer and came out onto the road, this friend of his asked him, hey, I believe you go there to pray, right? Why do you do that? God is there everywhere, like why do you have to go to this private place? And his friend replies, I know that God is there everywhere. God is the same everywhere, I know that. But I am not the same everywhere. I need that place to be by myself and to be with God. Yes, my dear friends, we are not the same everywhere. If you are a CEO in a company or a policeman or an officer, you cannot be that in your family. You can't operate the way you operate in your workspace with your family members. It's the same with God. While God is there in all those places, we need to call and connect to Him wherever we are. But at the same time, we need to make exclusive time and exclusive physical space to relate with Him. If you invest in this, my dear friends, you are tuning into God. And the last point I'd like to share today is about growing in our friendship with Christ. There's another beautiful poem that brings it out in a very beautiful way. The world I thought belonged to me. Goods, gold, people, land and sea. Well, that's what many of us think, that everything is mine. And therefore we use and we abuse the whole of creation. And so this is an attitude that makes us arrogant and proud and want to play God, right? Everything is mine. Wherever I walked beneath God's sky, in those days, the word was I. The word was I. Years later, in my pathway clear, flashed the vision of a fragment dear. My former word no more sufficed, and what I was I and Christ. My dear friends, here already there's a kind of a growth in spirituality, where we soon realize that we are not all powerful. We are not independent. We are not self-dependent all the time. We need someone with us. And here, in the context of the life of the Spirit, we realize that we need Christ with us. And so therefore, what was I becomes I am Christ. And he goes ahead. But oh, the more I thought of him, his glory grew while mine grew dim. I shrank so small, he towered so high, and what I said was Christ and I. You see the gradual shift, my dear friends. First was I, then it becomes I and Christ, and now it becomes Christ and I. St. John the Baptist so beautifully says it. He must increase, I must decrease. Years passed, the vision held its place and stared me steadily in the face. I speak now in humbler tone, and what I say is Christ alone. My dear friends, will we ever reach this point where we can say, Christ alone suffices in my life? Christ alone. St. Paul says it so beautifully. For me to live is Christ, to die is gain. And Jesus, he himself has told his disciples, I call you servants no longer, I call you friends. John chapter 15 verse 15. How are you and I in our relationship with Christ, my dear friends? I think we need to allow our life experiences to push us in this direction. To give God that space and to give God that importance in our life where He becomes everything to us. St. Teresa of Avila, God alone suffices. My dear friends, as we end today's reflection, let's again remember the 7 steps that will help us to tune into God. First, make space for God. Remember, the Lord is telling us, listen, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into his or her house and I will dine with that person. Revelations chapter 3:20. So the first point, make space for God. Second, visualize your God. Third, Review your spiritual journey to see that God is present in your life. Fourth, assess your prayer life. Fifth, relate your prayer to life. Sixth, thirst for the need for solitude. And seventh, grow in your friendship with Christ. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, the world without end. Amen. God bless you, my dear friends. Be stay tuned for a relay of this talk in the Gujarati language at 10:15. Thank you. See you again.